You're looking at the annual Calgary Pride Parade taking place this morning. This year they hired extra security, hoping to make people feel safer. Pride organizers say that's because there have been hate crimes and discrimination targeted at the LGBTQ community this year. And as you can see here, a big celebration with lots of different colorful vehicles, people wearing hats and shirts and celebrating Pride. The parade started on 4th Street Southwest and ended at Fort Calgary. And meanwhile, south of Calgary, the RCMP in Fort MacLeod, Alberta, continue to look into two incidents that appear to have targeted the LGBTQ community, events that occurred within hours of each other. 4 youth now face charges of criminal mischief in connection to the release of a foul-smelling liquid inside an historic theater during a drag show. Just hours later, the RCMP received reports of 5 suspects burning a pride flag. Colin Walmsley is a Fort MacLeod Pride Committee member. He spends his summers in the town, but today we've reached him in Paris, where he works during the school year, and I so appreciate you taking the time. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, Jennifer.
Can we start, Colin, by talking about those incidents I described, because I know you were there. Can you tell us what happened in this beautiful historic theater?
Yeah, so the theater was in the evening. We actually had Pride that entire day. And in the theater, we were having our drag show, which lasts 2 or 3 hours, and kind of pretty close to the beginning, we started smelling a pretty foul smell. I thought it was vomit. I thought someone had thrown up in the theater, and it turned out that there were some youths in the theater who had released some kind of hunting oil, I think Fisher and Martin lure oil. And then later in the night, during the Pride in the Park, during the day, we'd actually raised our Pride flag on the community flagpole. And unfortunately, there was some people who had apparently pulled down the metal pole, and burned the flag.
Tell me what's going through your mind when you were witnessing something like that.
Well, yeah, it's disheartening, because as the committee, we kind of put so much work into, like in the lady in the intro was saying, we put so much work into making this a celebration for the queer community and trying to make this something positive and something that makes youth in our community feel accepted and queer people in our community feel accepted. And then this just kind of, it's a punch in the gut, to see that there's people who are willing to go to such lengths to express their distaste and their hatred of the queer community.
And I gather, did I read correctly, that last year there was an incident as well involving Manure at one of the Pride events?
Yeah, so last year before our Pride in the Park, the night before, we had someone come and kind of smear pig manure all over the park. So again, this is the 4th year that we've had Pride. We're a pretty small town, and so we don't have a very big Pride celebration. It's just a one-day thing. But each year, the violence and the threats have kind of been escalating. The first 2 years went off smoothly. Last year we had the pig manure, and then this year we had the burning of the flag and the liquid in the theater.
And as you say, Colin, it's a small town, so I'm assuming it's a town in which most people know everybody. And so how does this make you feel that this kind of event is happening and this kind of hate? Does it make you and other members of your community feel less safe?
I don't think it makes us feel necessarily less safe. I think queer people who grow up in a small town realize, and especially in conservative small towns like in southern Alberta, you realize that there's people who hold those views within the community, and you realize that that's always a risk. And I think that's why so many queer people in towns like Fort MacLeod are afraid to come out, or who leave town after they finish high school and come out so they can move somewhere where they feel safer. So I think everyone kind of knows that undercurrent exists in the community. It's just too bad, I think, to see that people who hold those views are feeling that it's more acceptable to go to these lengths against the queer community and feel that this sort of violence is acceptable.
And are you and the organizers feeling the need for more police protection during these events, and has that had to grow?
Yeah, it's unfortunate, because we never want our event to feel like it's under guard, that there's police everywhere and that security is always a risk. But we did know, like you said, it's a small town, and we'd heard rumors ahead of time that there might be protests and there might be some sort of threats against the event. So we did have quite a heavy police presence even this year, where there were 6 or 8 police officers kind of around the event the entire time, and they did do a very good job of keeping it relatively calm and keeping everybody safe. But even despite that police presence, they were able to stink bomb the Empress Theater and to pull down and burn the pride flag. So I'd hate to see what would have happened if they weren't there.
We are, as you know, hearing from pride groups and organizations across the country saying something similar, that intolerance and hatred are on the rise. What is your take as to why this is happening now?
I think a lot of it has to do with, just the political atmosphere right now, and that you see a lot of politicians who are kind of using that dog whistle rhetoric, specifically, I think, against transgender people and against drag queens. We've seen that in the States, we've seen that up here in Canada, and so I think that, a lot of people are kind of starting to feel that it's okay to kind of express this hate against drag queens and against transgender people. And even in our small town, we have our mayor who, retweets anti-drag queen and anti-transgender conspiracy theories. And, I think that the politicians have to kind of realize that it's not just the laws, it's also the rhetoric that is kind of creating this hate against queer people.
I'm almost out of time, Colin, but I'm curious, because you live and work in Paris during the school year, are you seeing a similar situation there?
Not so much, actually, in Paris right now. It's, obviously, I think anywhere you go in the world, you're going to see that there's kind of that undercurrent, and there's people who believe that. But the difference is just how far people are willing to go to kind of express that hate. And luckily, Paris, and I think a lot of major cities, there's kind of a big enough group of people who are supportive of queer rights and are willing to stand up, and allies who are willing to stand up against hatred against queer people. It kind of renders that a little bit illegitimate. And I don't think we're quite there yet in small towns, but, even with these events that we had, there's been a lot of support that's come from our community in Fort MacLeod, so hopefully small communities are getting there as well.
Yeah, you speak of the support, and I gather from reading other comments you have made, that you feel that is the silver lining in all of this, the community support. Colin, we have to leave it there for time. I so appreciate yours today. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Fort MacLeod Pride Committee member Colin Walmsley.